Dear students, good evening. Welcome to Law Excellence IAS. Let us do the editorial analysis for today, that is 17th November 2022. The first article at COP27, India and three others oppose carbon border tax. What is this carbon border tax? We have to understand here. The carbon producing intensive sectors are there, like steel, cement, etc. These carbon intensive sectors, when they are crossing across the borders or the products crossing across the border, higher taxes have to be imposed. The tax is called carbon border tax. European Union at COP27 proposed for this. India has opposed, saying that higher tariffs on cement, steel, etc. these products, these are market distorting and these can create trust deficit across the countries. So remember what is carbon border tax. On carbon intensive sectors, when the goods cross the borders, higher tariffs have to be imposed, which we call it as carbon border tax. This unseating of vice chancellors faulty. Why this article is in news? Let me give you the context. You know Sardar Patel University in Gujarat and then APJ Abdul Kalam Technical University in Kerala. The vice chancellors are being removed on the judgments of the Supreme Court. Why the Supreme Court has given an adverse judgment? Let us try to understand the context over here. UGC has given certain regulations for the appointment of vice chancellors to the state universities. According to this regulation, first a search committee has to be constituted, and this search committee, based on that recommendations, a vice chancellor has to be appointed. The search committee has to give 3 to 5 names and one name has to be shortlisted and he has to be appointed as vice chancellor by the governor, who is the chancellor. In this case, in Gujarat Sardar Patel University, the search committee was not constituted. And in the case of Kerala, only one name is proposed, not 3 to 5 names. So that's why UGC regulations are being violated. It is stated as a reason for the Supreme Court to remove the vice chancellors of these universities. The governor of Kerala went further and asked all the other state universities vice chancellors also to resign, stating the same reason. In this context, let us try to understand constitutional provisions. You know that UGC, University Grants Commission, it has come into existence through an UGC Act. And then state legislature can pass laws. The regulations of UGC, these are regulations made by a body created by the act of the parliament. So these regulations, can they be equated with the law of the state? So this is a subordinate rule compared to the laws made by the legislature. So a rule made by the subordinate authority, can it override a law made by the legislature? That is the technical question over here. To understand this, let us try to understand Article 254 and concurrent list, on the basis of which Supreme Court gave its judgment. Concurrent list, both union and state can make the laws. Remember the word law. Can make the laws. Article 254 states that when there is repugnancy, conflict, then union law will prevail over the state law. See, union law will prevail over the state law, not the rule of any subordinate authority. UGC is a subordinate authority to the parliament. If parliamentary law is in conflict with state law, parliamentary law will prevail. Then UGC regulations are not equivalent to parliamentary law. In spite of they not being equivalent to parliamentary law, the States University Act is overridden by the regulations of UGC. This consideration of the Supreme Court is not appropriate. It is undermining the authority of the state legislature, undermining the respect for the state laws. That is the author's opinion. And it is also not in the good interests of the federal relations in this country. And UGC Act, if you carefully observe, it was not given any authority to make regulations on the appointment of vice chancellors to the state universities. In this context, UGC is a professional body to maintain the standards of university education. It is not related to the vice chancellor's appointment. That is another argument the author has brought in. So, point to take home is Article 254 applies to the laws of the parliament and state laws, not to the rules of the subordinate authorities existing at the union level. The subordinate authorities' rules or regulations cannot override the state laws. This is the opinion expressed. India's G20 presidency will be inclusive, action-oriented. This is what an important statement which you can use it for your answer writing. In this case, let us try to understand the Bali summit and outcomes of the Bali summit. Remember, India is going to be the president of G20 and Shanghai Cooperation Organization for 2023. A very big responsibility on the shoulders of India. In this case, it has to build consensus on various matters, especially with regard to the economic recession coming up, and also with regard to the climate change, and with regard to the conflicts which are there in the world. In this case, at Bali conference, none of them have expected that a joint statement or consensus document is possible because Russia is opposing any kind of criticism of its war on Ukraine. In this context, achieving the joint statement itself is a big success for India. And second, China and India are not seeing eye to eye. Here, Prime Minister Modi has given a handshake to the Xi Jinping, that is bringing back the relations or trying to talk on the matters. That is a good thing. Last time at Shanghai Cooperation Organization meet, they did not see eye to eye. Now they are able to shake hands. And then India is going to chair this SCO and G20 in 2023. And Bali, there is another thing which has happened, that is thaw in the USA-China relationships. Biden and Xi meeting has happened in Bali. And then today USA and China are competing with each other. They agreed that this competition shall not go into conflict. And they have to manage this competition responsibly. Responsible management of the competition, that is what is been spoken about. And they have shut down every dialogue after Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. Now they have reopened the dialogue on climate change, and other challenges still remain. USA don't want China to compete it economically. So export of high-end chips to China were been stopped, which has affected the semiconductor industry of China, and China raised it as a concern. And second, USA has a concern regarding human rights issues in Tibet, Hong Kong, Xinjiang province. And what Xi Jinping said, you have your own democracy, I have my style of democracy, that is his answer. Third is, the policy of US towards Taiwan is worrisome to China. The policy is called strategic ambiguity. They say on one side, we respect one China policy. The other way, they say that any force on Taiwan is not acceptable. In this context, they are maintaining strategic ambiguity, which is worrisome to China. These issues are still pending between US and China. These are the points you need to recollect from this. Quest for transparency in FTA negotiations, free trade agreement negotiations. India has one goal now, that is to raise its export share in the global market. What is the target India wants to achieve? That is $2 trillion of exports by 2030. That is the target. So that's why left and right it is making free trade agreements with various countries, including Israel, Canada, UK, European Union. Everywhere it is involved with talks. In this context, the past experiences, if you see, in the case of ASEAN, India did not gain from the free trade agreement, and there was huge competition to the spices. States like Northeast and Kerala, they got affected worse because of free trade agreement. And now, are we taking care of these situations? The author says that the free trade agreement negotiations in India are not transparent. We have to make them transparent, and we have to ensure that stakeholders are properly involved. In this context, how the system works in UK is been given. In UK, Department for International Trade, DFIT, looks into free trade agreements. It has to prepare the impact assessment document on various sections of the society, on various sectors with free trade agreement. So in India, is such impact assessment document is made or not? Once it is made, all the business professionals, everyone are made to involve as stakeholders to discuss that impact assessment document. Their opinions are considered. Then it goes to subcommittee of parliament, which is called International Agreements Committee. And this committee will examine that. After that, free trade agreement's final document has to be kept before the parliament for 21 days for its ratification. So that's where eye of parliament is there, detailed scrutiny by parliamentary committee is there, and then examination by the stakeholders is there, and impact assessment by the department is there. The similar thing also can be taken up by the government of India, especially Ministry of Commerce. This is what the author's expression is. Unknown sources of income spiked after electoral bond entry. You know what are electoral bonds? So these are for the political donations to the political parties. What is the advantage with this? The donations are completely anonymous. No one knows what these donations are, where these donations are going. Now SBI issues these electoral bonds every quarter for 10 days. Now, electoral bonds are supposed to stop the black money and make the banking transfers easy to the political parties. If I want to donate the political party, I can go to the bank and submit a payment to buy the electoral bonds and then give it to a political party I want. Obviously, the effort is been lauded as the curtailment of black money in Indian elections. That's how the government projected it as. There is an organization called ADR, Association for Democratic Reforms. What it says today is, after electoral bonds, the unknown source of income has increased. In the case of the regional parties, the unknown source of income increased by 10%. In the case of national parties, it is increased by 5%. And who is the maximum beneficiary of electoral bonds? That is the party in power at the center, where 67% of the total amount received by all the political parties, including national and regional, were received by the BJP. Next is, who should pay for climate damage? Who should pay for it? Now, here why I took this article, statistics. We are talking about equity and justice in the case of carbon budget, in the case of payment for losses and damages, in the case of mitigation towards climate change. Who has to pay for that? That is, equity and justice has to guide that. In this case, India's per capita emissions are very low. If you observe the India's per capita emission, it is 6.3 tons per year in 2020. What is the global average? What is the global average? So, world average per capita, now Indian average is 2.4, world average is 6.3. If you go to USA, it is 14, and then China, it is 9.7. This statistical information you have to remember. The India is 1/3 of the global average, close to 1/3. So global average is 6.3, India is 2.4. The per capita emissions, India has very low marking. That is the point which you need to remember. And US is responsible, US and European Union are responsible for close to half of the global emissions, that is 47%. These 2 points are very clear for you. So remember, India's per capita emissions are 2.4, global average per capita is 6.3, and then coming to USA it is 14, 13 for Russian Federation, 9.7 for China. Remember this data to enrich your answer for +1 advantage. Next is, what is the target level of retail information? 4 or ±2% is the targeted inflation in India. In October, it has come down to 6.77%. But is this inflation has been settled, or did we reach the stagnated levels of inflation or controlled levels of inflation? No, still we have supply side bottlenecks. And the next is, we also have food shortages, climate challenges still existing. Why this 6.77% has come up? Major reason is base effect. This was the prelims question before. What is base effect? When last year base to compare is very high, then this year it appears decreased. Last year base is very low, this month it appears high. So simple thing. Last year is low at the same month, then any increase will appear as high. Next term. So this comparison, it will be less. This comparison, it will be more. So the base on which you are comparing is small. This year, it appears to be high growth. The base on which you are comparing is high. The next year, it appears to be low. So that is what we call it as base effect. The reasons for decreased inflation is base effect, because last year the same month, the inflation might be already high. That's the reason why already high base is there. That's where we are comparing the present inflation. The inflation appears to be less. That is called base effect. And food prices also have come down, especially vegetable oil prices have come down. But are they going to be stable? We don't know yet. It is not at the time for celebration. That is the article's information. Why I have collected this article? Whenever we talk about inflation, you need to talk about base effect. Thank you very much. Have a great day.